Today, we're going to be focusing on taking libraries of things mobile. So the various ways of taking them out, be it a truck, kiosks, or shipping container. So we've got three presentations. We're going to, after we hear from each presenter, we'll have an opportunity for Q&A, and then we'll move on to the next presenter. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it to our first presenter, Morella.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm going to be talking with you about my experience at running the Shareable, which is a traveling library of things in England, in the southwest of England, more precisely. We started out in 2017 in a small town called Totnes. So you can see a little image of a garage where we started out. The town council let us free of charge for 6 months to pilot the idea of library of things and this is like a small town, 8,500 people in rural Devon. That's the county where we are. And thankfully, the community was very much on board, and the project evolved so much over the first couple of years. What we noticed is that we had people from the nearby communities coming to us to access the stuff we had available. And it was 2019 when we had an opportunity to apply for a national lottery grant, who also supported us to start the project in the first place. And that was a pot of money for £50,000, which for us at the time was an incredible amount of money. And we were like, oh, given we have this opportunity, what could we do with that if we were to get that amount of money? So that's how the idea of going mobile came about, because around us there are, small towns of 3,000-4,000 people, and some of them have the highest index of poverty in the country. So that's how the idea came about. The way that grant worked was that we applied and we got shortlisted, and then people had to vote for the projects they wanted to see becoming a reality, and we were very lucky to get it. So throughout the end of 2019, and then when the pandemic started, we were in the process converting this van. And as you can see, the real transformation, because our name is Share Sheds, we went with these somewhat at the time felt like a crazy idea to have a shed on wheels. So it's a really beautiful vehicle made of timber, a cedar. We were thinking of how can we make these really work. And it took a bit of creativity and also engaging with people, not only carpenters, but people who are very good at visualizing. When I got in the van, I was like, oh, I can't really picture how we could fit the most popular items, at least. By then we already had 2.5 years of experience at running a library of things, so we knew what people were most interested in. And the idea was that we would have the most popular items in the van, and we would have a storage space. In our case, we have a little garage that actually one of our members lets us use it free of charge, where we keep the more bulky items like a wheelbarrow or extendable ladder. So things that are not very popular, and yet when people want, they can book it. We say in the description of the item, we need a week notice, so we can go to this garage and then add it to the van. We do have a solar panel and an inverter, so we have a bit of power in the van. So not massive, and yet enough to test out something electrical, just to make sure it's working and to charge up our iPad. So we have a couple of iPads and a mobile phone that we use for the share shed. So that felt really important. As you can see, the storage, is very versatile and unique. So in order to accommodate, so we have a combination of shelves and hooks. And at the bottom, you can see that we use an inner tube from bicycles to kind of tight things like carpet cleaners so they don't fall when the van is in movement. And so everything has to be hinged. We currently, and we started with 3 communities, and based on the practicality, meaning what was doable for us in terms of distance, but also the needs. So Buckfastleigh is one of the, as I mentioned, it's one of the towns with highest index of poverty. So we really wanted to target that community as well as others. This is all countryside towns. And so it was a combination between needs and interest, meaning the local authorities were reaching out to us like, look, it's a really great project. We would love if you could serve our town too. The project over the years has evolved, and we currently have about 350 items. So since April 2017, we've had 2,700 people becoming members, and that has led to over 5,000 loans. And we estimate that we've helped people save £100,000, which is lovely. We're a combination of 2 part-time staff members, and we rely on the kindness of our volunteers in order to run the service, because ideally we want to have a staff member when the van is open, along with the volunteers in terms of health and safety, having 2 people there. And we are very also lucky for it because we have various repair cafes in these communities. So we currently serve 7 communities, and 3 of them have established repair cafes. We liaise a lot with them in terms of maintaining our items. And just out of curiosity, these are the 10 most popular items in our case here in England. In terms of challenges and opportunities, I wanted to share that unfortunately we did have this very unfortunate occasion that our van got broken into. And that was a real learning experience, as far as it was the first time we ever left the van not where it usually stays overnight, which is a car that has lockable gates and CCTV cameras. It was literally a one-off occasion where the main staff member who drives the van, my colleague Mark, just because of the logistics, wouldn't be able to get the van from where it is in the following day. So we left in a public space where we were meant to be open the following day, and as he got there in the morning, the van had been broken into. Sadly, a few things had been stolen, and the reason I'm sharing that is, one, it was a hard learning, in terms of how we have to leave it where it's locked and it has a CCTV camera. And at the same time, the flip side was that this is the most popular social media posts. We, out of that, got a lot of publicity, and the local newspapers were contacting us and sharing our story. And out of that, I find it very moving. A lot of people started donating money to us because they were just touched by what we're up to. Unexpectedly, we then gained a lot of attention. So it's just like one of those, I suppose, unexpected things that we went through. And just wanted to share also that as well as volunteers, we have a team of people, like of drivers, because I actually don't drive the van. I'm the person who is doing the everyday admin and fundraising and comms, and is an inconvenience that I can't drive the van. So as I said, my main colleague Mark is there day in, day out, and now we have a team of 3 other backup drivers. So either when he's on annual leave, or obviously sometimes things come up. So it's become much more resilient, the project, by having those extra people on board. Yeah, in terms of our journey, another challenge has been funding. So we still very much rely on grants in order to offer services in terms of the affordability and trying to make it convenient. So it's been a real challenge between our expansion, because we've been giving grants to go to other towns, and we still get a lot of requests. But every time we go to a new town, it means that we lose a lot of money in the at least first 2 years, because it takes time to build markets. It takes time for people to know about it, and then to really shift how they consume, I suppose, and live. So that's been an ongoing challenge. And at the very moment, we're crowdfunding, because while we've been very lucky over the past 7 years with grants, it's been a real challenge, certainly, I imagine it's all over the world and also in the UK, in terms of the competition and the availability for funds. So we're, trying at the moment to raise £30,000. So if you're able to spare any cash, and I really mean any contribution, we're very thankful, because at the moment we've got a match funder, and you can find more information in that link on our website. Yeah, at the same time, it's the most rewarding job, and it's really transformational to see how many people are, changing how they live, how they consume. And it's really lovely with this mobile experience to be able to go to the communities where they wouldn't have access to such services or resources. That's been our journey in terms of running a library of things in rural Devon. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that, Morello. Yeah, please do add questions in the chat. I've got a few questions just to get us started. And actually, we'll go with this one. Francesca asks, what is the cost of running the van monthly? So what is kind of the operating cost?
Yeah, good question. The fuel, for instance, is about £180 a month. We just had literally today the van MOT'd, which here in the UK needs to do that every year, and that's the thing. It is a great unknown, as far as like every time it goes in the garage, you're like, oh gosh, fingers crossed. So this time around, it was £1,400. So and then it has service. So I don't know how exactly that would work monthly, but because it's all variable depending on what's up with the van. It was a second-hand van, so there's always that risk involved. For instance, when we bought it, we didn't realize the whole body of it was rotten, so that's why we had to take the whole body out and just keep this chassis, even though we had hired someone who was meant to be an expert to assess that. So it's really tricky to put a figure in that. However, that's in terms of the contrast of having a place. We don't pay rent, we don't have electricity and all those bills ongoingly. So there is that trade, I suppose.
Got it. And I'm wondering if you can just kind of touch on three things maybe at once, related to your locations that you're at. So Amanda's got a question here asking about where do you park for those open times?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, you mentioned that in between at night you normally have a locked storage place you're able to have the vehicle, so you don't have break-ins except for that one time. But wondering, how have you chosen the physical locations that you're at? And are they connected with any other organizations or businesses or things like that you kind of partner with? And how is it that you're going to each one of these locations once per week? And if so, like, how long do you spend at each one of those locations? Like, how many hours are you open at those locations?
So I should have made that clear that we go to these 7 locations once a week. So our loans work on a weekly basis. And we started out in Totnes, and Totnes is where also, coincidentally, the transition town movement began. And the reason why I mentioned that is because it's a community known for being very progressive. Therefore, the buying was very, not straightforward, but certainly much easier than elsewhere. And because we've been here the longest, and we are the Share Shed's part of an umbrella organization, network of well-being, we're very well connected in this community already. Therefore, this is where the most trade happens, like by far. And in terms of choosing the locations, it was, as I mentioned, a combination between the needs in terms of identifying, the communities around us, the logistic routes, so what makes sense. So we do up to 2 locations a day, and so it's like 2 or 3 hours in the morning, one, then 2 or 3 hours, then move, then 2 and 3 hours. Now, we're still tweaking things as we go along, because it's a whole, there's time to set it up, closing down. If it's raining, when it's not raining, we want to display things outside, but if it's raining, all these things are crumbed. It makes the physical space a bit more limited. And then there's the interest from the local councils. So in the UK, thankfully, there has been a movement in terms of local authorities declaring climate emergence. And in order to support their agenda and meeting their carbon emissions targets, they've kind of reached out to us. And what has happened is that some of them supported us with grants to begin with, to try out, to build demand. The long-term vision, we would love for all these communities to have their own library of things. We wanted to make ourselves redundant, meaning we want to continue going elsewhere and they have their own projects. We're experimenting that at the moment in terms of having a locker, because it's such a short window, 2 or 3 hours. Obviously, a lot of people cannot make that time window, so we're experimenting with drop-off and pick-up place. People can, so we have that flexibility. And yeah, it's evolving. Depending on, you asked about partnerships, Tom, and depend. Location is key. I think by now, after the sessions, you would all know that's how being where people already are is important. So we've been trying to be like in one of the locations where we go to, and we're just off the main, and these are always small towns where everything happens in the high streets. And as soon as we're not in the high streets, it's much lower. Sorry, I'm a bit struggling with the English. Okay. Like less people, So, and we try to be where people are, but sometimes it's not doable because we take up a lot of space. We need 3 parking space between opening the van and being open, and people don't want sometimes to offer that because limited car parking. So learning and adjusting as we go along.
Yeah, and can you just touch on very quickly about the towns you're going to? Are these mostly rural areas?
Yeah, so 7 communities, about 4,000 people each. And so that our latest expansion was to 2 bigger towns, so 13,000 people each. And we thought that when we extended to these towns, and that was a combination of between people reaching out to us and the local authority asking if we could go there, and they're a bit further. So in terms of cost for us is the time, is the fuel, and yet we thought like it's going to be a no-brainer because we'll get much more trade there. And it turned out that it's taking us quite a lot of time to gather momentum, and because we're not connected, we're connected in these communities. So that's been another learning how important it is. What we're trying now is to connect with the connectors in the towns. Who are the people who are on the ground, who know everyone, who is involved with all the projects, so that there has been a gap between our intentions and our ability to really engage with the community. Because where I live, I'm talking with people where Mark lives, it makes a lot of difference. So that has been an interesting learning too.
Thank you. And there was another question just about, whether or not the share shed requires any type of special commercial driver's license to be able to drive. And if so, is that certification for volunteers that are driving covered by the organization, or is that something that expected of the volunteers to be able to get themselves?
So no, in our case, we went with a van that's up to 3.5 tons, that it doesn't require a special license. Because we're in Devon, in this account where the roads are really narrow. So that was also something that we had to take into account. It's different if you're in a city and you could have a bus, for instance. It's just in terms of practicality. That was an aspect, but no, it doesn't require special license. And the drivers, because the drivers are also the people who open up and serve the customers and deals with money, they're all paid members. So the volunteers are helping us running alongside it, but whoever is driving, because of the level of responsibility it entails, our model, is that these are staff members. And another aspect is the insurance. So it makes a lot of difference. We wanted for insurance to be any, rather than named drivers, to be any drivers over 30 years old, because that really affects the price. So that's how we worked out. It just happens that our drivers are over 30 anyway, and that makes it much more affordable. But rather than having the 4 people who currently drive, because sometimes none of them are available, we've had occasions when we had to get someone like who can drive, and so that was another aspect to consider.
Thank you. And just final, because we need to wrap up and move on to our next presenter, but I wanted to ask you, one, you talked about the issue of the share shed getting broken into the one time you didn't put it into your normal storage. Have you had any other problems, like with items not being returned, the fact that you don't have a physical location, or that you're not as an established organization within a community? Is there any issues with respect for the items themselves? Any of those kind of problems that you've had to face?
I'm very pleased to report that what the biggest learning throughout it has been the amount of abundance and generosity. So when we started out, there was a lot of mistrust, and that was something very interesting to navigate, and a lot of fear. And the beauty of learning a number of things, certainly, and I also appreciated that's being lucky, because unfortunately I have heard some wild stories, very unfortunate stories. In our case, in 7 years, we've had about 5 items that have gone missing. And 4 of them, we have a pretty good idea of what happened. And it was like, someone was moving houses, the other went to the hospital. And it's just literally one occasion, which we still don't know what happened. It was an angle grinder. It was the first and only time we felt the person wasn't genuine. And yet is a theory. We don't know. This person lived in so far away that we didn't feel it was worth enough to go and make the effort. We tried to reach out to them via email and telephone, but it didn't work out. So that was, thankfully, the only time. 5% of our things are secondhand, so we operate with things that are donated to us. So obviously there's a natural wear and tear of things. Like today, someone contacted us that the pressure washer is not working. And it's always very disappointing when that happens. And we try to keep things very much in the best working condition, but it does happen, and literally, like 100% of times people are very understanding. And obviously we try to do our best, to offer replacements. Sometimes we go and take a replacement to them ourselves, but this has really kind of boosted my sense of hope and care for people and trust in the universe, because people are genuinely very, full of good intentions and goodwill and up to good stuff. So that has been the most rewarding learning of it all.
And just final question from Teddy is, what if someone can't return an item when the share set is back in their community? Are they charged a late fee, or how do you work that out?
So they can be extended online. We use Land Engine as our software, and they can, even to return to another town, which is also great, because sometimes that works for people. And yeah, we do, if they're going to have it for one more week, we charge for an extra week. At the same time, it does happen, like it happened last week. Someone had to have a trip unexpectedly, couldn't return the knife, and they did reach out to say, but we're like, oh, it's reserved for somebody else. So then eventually got a friend to come and return it. But it was just because it had been reserved. Otherwise, we would say, no problem, we'll have it for 1 more week. But another aspect of our project, and I'm proud to share that we made very sure that we didn't want money to be a barrier for people to use our services. So we state that on our website, and while we obviously rely on the income we generate, we also have at the core of our mission that people, especially those who need the most and cannot afford things, still reach out to us, and we say, look, just make a donation, whatever works. Someone wanted to blow a lawnmower, just like, it's 90 quid, 90 pounds for a week. And they said, unfortunately, I'm not able to do that. And we're like, okay, what can you do? She's like, oh, I've got £2 here. Like, great. And they were so, so appreciative. And that's also lovely to be able to be at service in that level.
Well, thank you, Mirella, for sharing that.
Yeah, feel free
With
to
that,
reach out
yeah.
if you have any questions.